Thank you. My name is Bob Gunner, and I'm an alcoholic. Um, I want to thank Stephen and the Serenity Improvement Group for asking me to do this. It's an honor and a privilege to participate in any meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, but especially something like this. And I thank you. You know, the big book tells me I'm supposed to share with you in a general way what I was like, what happened, and what I'm like today. Not what it was like, what happened, and what it's like today, because it hadn't changed one damn bit for me. And for that, I'm kind of grateful. Before I start sharing per se, I want to read something because this is something I found in a meeting on a seat when I was trying to find direction in Alcoholics Anonymous. And it talks about the journey. The name of this is The Station. And it's something I read pretty much every time I tell my story, because it points out the way I was. And if you identify with this, you probably will identify with some of the things I will share. It's called The Station by Robert Hastings. Tucked away in our subconscious is an idyllic vision. We see ourselves on a long trip that spans the continent. We are traveling by train. Many of you probably have done that. But out the windows, we drink in the passing scene of cars and nearby highways, of children waving at a crossing, of cattle grazing on a distant hillside, of smoke pouring from a power plant, or row upon row of corn, wheat, of flatlands and valleys, of mountains and rolling hillsides, of city skylines and village halls. But uppermost in our minds is that final destination. Bands will be playing and flags waving. Once we get there, our dreams will come true, and the pieces of our lives will fit together like a jigsaw. How restlessly we pace the aisles, damning the minutes for loitering, waiting for the station. When we reach the station, that will be it, we cry. When I'm 18, when I buy that new car, when I put that last kid through college, when I've paid off the mortgage, when I get a promotion, when I reach the age of retirement, I shall live happily ever after. Sooner or later, we must realize there is no station, no one place to arrive at once and for all. The joy of life is the trip. The station is only a dream. It constantly outdistances us. Hellish the moment is a good motto. Isn't it the burden of today that drives men mad? It is the regrets of yesterday and the fear of tomorrow. Regret and fear are twin thieves who rob us of today. So stop pacing the aisles and counting the miles. Instead, climb more mountains, eat more ice cream, go barefoot more often, swim more rivers, watch more sunsets, laugh more, cry less. Life must be lived as we go along. The station will come soon enough. And for some of those guys on that 10 o'clock meeting that Stephen was referred to, a friend of ours reached the station on Sunday night at 4:30 a.m. He had been sick for about 45 days, and I was really glad to see him get off that train and get to the station. I'm a generally boring alcoholic. I never had a DUI. I haven't been divorced, not to say that she wasn't threatening or hadn't even started to move out. I liked alcohol. I loved alcohol. I like everything to do with alcohol. I love bars. I love the glasses. I love the glasses, but I love the taste of anything that I could swallow. You know, Chamberlain talks about anything too thin to chew. That's kind of the way I was. If it was too thin to chew, I'd swallow it. You know, I was a people pleaser, and alcohol gave me the ability to do what I needed to do. One of my guys one time, one of the guys that worked for me, accused me of being a chameleon. And I thought it was a terrible thing. But today I realize he was right, because I could kick you in the fanny right now and 5 minutes later say, hey, let's go to lunch. You'd still be stewing about the fanny kicking, and I wouldn't even have thought twice about it. I was just an average, ordinary drunk. I started drinking when I was about 13 or 14. The first time I bought alcohol in South Carolina, we had paper driver's license, and you could change it with an eraser and a typewriter. And I changed mine and walked into a 7-Eleven and bought 3 Champagne malt liquors. First time I ever bought any. Now, I didn't know what it was going to do for me. I didn't know what it tasted like, but I bought 3. Why? Why wouldn't you just buy one and taste it? You might not like it, but I didn't. And that was the beginning of my journey. I had alcohol before, but not purchased. And after that, I was pretty much a weekend drunk. Get drunk on Friday night, get drunk on Saturday night, preach the young people's service on Sunday night, and go back to school on Monday. During that time, I met my today wife. We were in the 7th grade. We parted ways until we were in college, got back together. We had high school clubs back then. We lived in a college town, Spartanburg, and we had Converse and Wofford and Spartanburg Junior College and blah, blah, blah. And in high school, we tried to be like the college kids. We had fraternities. And I was a member of one fraternity. There were only 2 men's, but there were several women's, and you could be a member of all the women's. And Gwen was a member of several, and we just got drunk. There was a gentleman, Mr. Foss, who was a police officer, who we would hire to guard the door. We would rent ballrooms in hotels, and we would bring our drinks and setups and just drink. Mr. Foss was not there to keep us in. He was there to keep anybody else out. Our parents, the authorities, anybody else. And Mr. Foss became known to all of us. When we got in trouble and Mr. Foss was around, if he said quit it, we quit it. He had that respect. When it came to drinking, I didn't respect anybody or anything. Gwen and I got married when she graduated from college in 3 years, 1988, and we got married in October of '88. A couple of years later, I went to my doctor in Spartanburg, and I said, "How do you know if you're an alcoholic?" He said, "Oh, that's simple. You drink 3 drinks. You drink 1 drink a day for 30 days. You can't drink more than 1, but you have to drink 1. If you can do that for 30 days, you're not an alcoholic." 3 days I did that. The only 3 days of my life that I only drank 1. And I thought it was the stupidest test I'd ever heard of. And I went right back to drinking like I was. I diagnosed myself at 22 or 23, but it was to be 20 more years before I got here, and a lot of water under that bridge. A lot of stations I thought I had made. When we got married, the night before we got married, one of my buddies from Clemson showed up, and he decided we were going to have a bachelor party. And we went out, and he had a friend who was a police officer in an adjoining city. This was Columbia, and we were in an adjoining city. And this police officer picked us up, took us to each bar we went to, and we went to several, came around, opened the back door, let us out. We go into the bar for an hour or 2. He would come back, pick us up, open the door, we'd get in the back, he'd take us to the next bar. And we did that all night. The next day, my friend was so hungover when he went to meet my dad, he lost his groceries right there in the bushes at the church. That story and group of stories is something that's just is what it is. We were having marital troubles about every 7 years. We met with the same man. We had been transferred to Atlanta, and by the way, my sobriety date is May the 5th, 1969. I'm one of those guys who was fortunate enough to pick up 1 ship, and I'll talk about that later. But I haven't had to pick up a second one. not because of me, but because I was too damn scared to go back and do what I was doing on the path that I was on. But Dave, the first time we went to see him, I didn't want to go. We were having marital difficulties. I wanted a divorce. Gwen wanted to stay sober. We stayed together, and we'd been trying to adopt a child in Colombia, and that came to fruition. And so we quit seeing Dave. 7 years later, year 14, we went back to see Dave. I don't remember what the crisis du jour was, but it was another one. And Dave called us a crisis couple. He said, I never saw anybody put up with so much pain and grief as you two do and still live with each other. And I mean, we didn't beat each other. We didn't throw things at each other, but we were verbally and mentally abusive. We'd adopted Michael by then, and that was 1989 when not 1989, 89, 19, what was that? 1976, I believe it was. And we just went on our merry way. From year 14 until year 21, I don't remember a lot. I know that during those prior times, and I think during these times too, I would go to work at 5:30 in the morning or 4:30 or 3:30 so I could get enough work accomplished so when I left at 11:30, I wouldn't have to come back. Because once I hit the bar, I wasn't coming back. I tried that. I went on appointments loaded more than once. I'm lucky I didn't, well, I'm just lucky. I'm just lucky. But those last 7 years, I have no real recollection other than a few bad drunks. When I got here, you guys talked about blackouts. I didn't know what the hell a blackout was. And then you said, you described one, and I said, oh, I had those all the time. I just thought everybody had them, but you just didn't tell anybody. And it was kind of strange. Gwen's dad was my wife's father, was my drinking buddy in Spartanburg. And whenever we would find a new liquor, we would take it. I would take a half gallon to Spartanburg, or he'd have a half gallon when I got there, and we would drink until we decided whether it was good or not. And the way I came across mine was there was a liquor store that I frequented. This was before I started going to different ones, so they didn't know how much I drank. And they knew me. And whenever they'd get a new one in, a new something in, they'd say, come on, let's go back in the back and try this out. So they always had something for me to try. And I ran into some guys from the Braves over there. Apparently they were well known. But I was taking the liquor to Spartanburg, and I went to see Ike. Gwen and I were separated at this time. Ike was her father. And I said, damn, Ike, you look good. You been down to Florida fishing? He was dying of cirrhosis of the liver, and I wasn't smart enough to know. He was just yellow. I thought he was tan. He was to die in March of the following year. But during this time, Gwen had been talking about going to Al-Anon and 12-stepping her parents. I didn't know what 12-stepping was, but that's what she was doing. And I ran into a friend at a bar. I used to take clients out after work, my second period of drinking. And one of the women I met at the bar was a client, and one of her friends came. And her friend had a big blue book. And her friend used to drink like we did. And I said, what's that? She said, that's a big book. I said, I can see it's a big damn book. What is it? She said, no, that's the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I said, oh, I'm an alcoholic. That's why I tell the bartender, keep that glass full. And she says, no, I can't drink. And I said, you're kidding me. Not at all? She said, no, I don't drink at all. I said, that sounds pretty cool. She said, tell me a little bit about it. She said, well, I'm an Alcoholics Anonymous. I said, aha, that's what Gwen's been talking about. Why don't you send me some literature so I can give it to my father-in-law? And so she mailed me some. with a phone number on it. And Gwen will tell you that she came home for several months, and those pamphlets would be laid out on the kitchen table, and I'd be reading them, and I'd say, "Yeah, hey Gwen, I'm an alcoholic," and she'd just shut up and drink like I drink, and everything will be fine. Now her idea of a drink was a water tumbler filled with bourbon after she'd been painting all night. She's a painter, was a painter at that point. So I never got those pamphlets to Ike. He died of cirrhosis, complications from cirrhosis. And we're seeing Dave. And I'm talking to Dave, and Dave's stroking his beard like a good shrink does, and smoking his pipe. His feet are up on his desk. This is a one-on-one session. I said, "What are you thinking about, Dave?" And he said, "Oh, nothing." I said, "What are you thinking about?" He said, "Well, you might be an alcoholic." And I said, "Dave, I am not an alcoholic." He said, "Well, I'm just saying maybe." And I thought about it some more, and I thought about it some more. And we had started what Dave suggested as date night, which was every Friday night we would go out for dinner, and we would have 2 drinks, no more, no less, 2 drinks. And Gwen couldn't figure out how I could come home and pass out after 2 drinks. What she didn't realize that I'd been drinking since 11:30 and quit drinking when I came home at 6:30 or 7. Some of you remember, putting the leftovers in the oven, not the microwave. There was no microwave. Put it in the oven with the aluminum foil. That's what I got greeted with most of the time. Because I was going to come home. I intended to come home. She doesn't like, it's hard to say likes to tell. She doesn't like to tell the story of one morning I came home about 6 o'clock in the morning. Champions in championship, and got overserved and got dragged out of the bar. The bartender had suggested that they either get me out or he was calling the cops. So they took me out and put me in my car. And I have no idea what happened for the next 5 or 6 hours, 7, 8 hours. I don't know. But when I came to, I was in the passenger seat. The window was rolled down. My glasses were on the dashboard. The keys were in the ignition. And I wasn't feeling real chipper. I was still bombed, and got behind the wheel. Didn't know where I was. Wound up being at the Knights of Columbus, but I didn't know that. Tried to find the expressway. Finally found the expressway. And some of you might can identify with it. I could not get the car to go faster than 45 miles an hour. I couldn't push my foot any farther. It wasn't the car. It was me. And anyway, I wasn't worried about it because she never waited up. She always went to bed. And I come puttering down the road into the subdivision, one road in. And she said she saw the headlights coming. And I pulled into the driveway, and I saw lights on in the lower level. And that wasn't a good sign. So I walk in the house, and she said, "I don't care who you've been, but this story better be good." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And she started laughing. She was dying to laugh, just laughing hysterically. I said, "What is the matter with you?" And she said, "Look at your feet." The toes of my shoes were gone. They had dragged me across the macadam parking lot out of the bar to my car, and it had worn the toes out of my boots. So I wound up not being in too much trouble after all that. But come May, we were going to open speaker meetings. Gwen had an Al-Anon sponsor, and I wasn't going anywhere. She was going, I take that back. She was going to open speaker meetings, and I wasn't going anywhere. And one night we disagreed in the bar we were on the last night we drank, whether it was Lingerlongs or Dugans. And the point is that we didn't agree on a lot for 40 years. We don't agree a lot now, but we'd do a whole lot better with it. But we were having our 2 drink limit, and I had my 2, and then I ordered another round or another drink. And she said, "Well, by God, if he's having 3, I'm having 3." And I don't remember, but she tells me that I broke down crying and I was sobbing. I'm an alcoholic. I'm an alcoholic. And the bartender strongly suggested that she get me out of there another time. And she said, as soon as I finish my drink, I will remove them. And we went to my office, and I had that pamphlet and the one with the number on it. And we called the number on the pamphlet, and the guy answered, but he was too busy to talk to me. So we sat there wondering what to do, and we called Alcoholics Anonymous. And Alcoholics Anonymous had a guy call me. And the guy who called me was pissed off and at home. His wife was also in the deal, and she left him and went to a meeting, and he was at home just fuming because she left it. And he picked up the phone. And I knew what an alcoholic looked like. They wore dirty overcoats, drank 4 Roses wine, and slept under newspaper and in stairways and parking lots. I stepped over them for years in downtown Atlanta. The Union Mission was right behind my office. And I said, do you own a car? He said, yeah, I own 2 cars. Do you own a house? Yeah, I do. You have a job? Yeah, I work for Delta Airlines. He said, I own a boat too, if that matters. And I thought, this isn't fitting. This just doesn't fit my picture here. And he said, can you not drink the rest of the night? I said, yeah, I can do that. He said, then meet me at the Waffle House in the morning at 9 o'clock. And I did. And this little chipper guy with his Delta Airlines shirt on, his Delta cap, and his blue shorts comes diddly bopping up the sidewalk. Hi, my name's Jim. And I'm thinking, what the hell is this? He said, come on, get in my car. We'll go to the meeting. I said, I know. Because I knew what these meetings were. They were gospel services. They brought you in on Friday night. They preached to you on Friday night, Saturday night. Sunday, they turned you out and let you go home so you could go back to work on Monday. And you could drink Monday through Friday, but you had to turn yourself in Friday night to go to those preaching services Friday night and Saturday. So I wasn't going with him. I just wasn't going to go. So I followed him. And I walked in, and there were men and women, young men and women, middle-aged men and women, old men and women, and they looked good. I figured they must be the families of those drunks. I wonder when they bring the drunks in. And I sat there, and this guy was reading, and I said, he must be the keeper. He must be the guy who runs this operation. And then they were giving out the chips, and they said, does anybody want a white chip? Now, I don't remember this. Jim tells me, does anybody want a white chip? Right? I'm just sitting there. I don't know what the hell these chips are. And Jim bumped me and said, that one's got your name on it. White chips is what we give in this area for beginners. And I said, they don't know who I am. How can they have my name on them? Well, anyway, they went on through the chips. And I said, this thing must not work because nobody picked up a 30-day. Nobody picked up a 90-day. Somebody picked up a 6-month. Nobody picked up a 9-month. Nobody picked up a year. This thing obviously doesn't work. So then they broke up and went into a meeting. And they broke up in this particular place. They had about 12 little rooms. And I will go into this room, and there are 12 people in there, and there's a lady leading this thing. And I couldn't figure it out because she was saying damn and hell and talking about God. And I mean, this ain't like any church I've ever been to. And you guys started to share. And I said, by God, my wife has gotten to these people and told her about me because you guys were telling my story. Not every bit of it, but each one of you shared a little piece of it. And before they shared, they read. And they read out of this little book. And today I think it was probably a first step meeting. And they read the first step. And I was terrified that they were going to ask me to read. I was terrified, petrified. And the book got to the guy next to me and it stopped. And boy, did I breathe a sigh of relief. And then I realized everybody in that room was going to share. I said, oh God, they're going to ask me to talk. And sure enough, that lady looked at me and said, would you like to share? And I was about to cry. And I said, that's all I could do. And they get up and they hold hands and say the Lord's Prayer. Now, what is this? I don't get it. So I go outside and Jim's waiting on me. And he says, what do you think? And I said, I identified. And he said, you're screwed. I said, what do you mean? He said, you are screwed. If you identified, then you got three choices. You're either going to be institutionalized, prison, or mental. You're going to take your own life, or you can come go with us. And I said, wait a minute. I just said I identified. And he said, I'm telling you, those are your choices. He said, there's another meeting tonight at 8:00. Would you like to go? I said, sure, I'll go. So I met him, and that night I picked up a white chip from a man named Ralph. When Ralph gave me the chip, I'm 42 years old, and he gives me a hug. And he said, get used to being hugged by men, boy. And Ralph was an old guy. He was a scientist with Scientific Atlanta. And, that was the beginning of a journey when I met a guy named John. And John was, they said John had 28 or 29 or 30 years in the deal. And I said, how the hell do you know? He said, well, he moved here from California. I said, well, did they come with a paper that said he had 30 years? How do you know? How do you know he's not lying? And they said, no, he's got it. And I couldn't figure out how you did that. And then a friend of his came in Monday night and said, hey, John, I love you and I don't care who knows it. I said, oh, God, now there's a bunch of gay people here and I don't know what to do about that. And so whenever Bill and I see each other, we say, I love you and I don't care who knows it. And, that began my journey. I went to a meeting on Sunday night. There's a guy sitting at the head of the table, and when he passed the basket, he collected all the money. And I said, I got to get me one of these meetings. That's a pretty good deal. I didn't realize anything about baskets and in central office or GSO or anything else. And a couple of nights later, a guy named Leo was picking up ashtrays and coffee cups. And I said, oh, Leo, you got KP. And he said, no, this is the way I stay sober. And by God, I'm folding chairs and picking up ashtrays and coffee cups, just like Leo. And it began a journey that, I don't know, I couldn't believe. I just can't believe that I was fortunate enough to stick around. I was at a meeting, that same little guy, Jim, who was my sponsor for about a year and a half, came to that meeting and he said, come on, we're going to a real meeting. And I said, this was at a scout hut and it was hot as Hades, the windows were up. He said, come on, we're going to a real meeting. I said, well, what is this? He said, no, we're going to a real meeting. I said, well, what's a real meeting? He said, a real meeting is where people have more time than I do. He had 8 or 9 years at that point. So I said, okay. So we went and I met guys with double-digit sobriety, teens, and they had gone back out when they had double-digit sobriety. So cumulative, they had over 30 years around the program. I met a guy there who, when they read how it works, his eyes were closed. And I punched him and said, Clarence, you sleeping? He said, no, I closed my eyes so I don't get distracted and I hear what they're reading. So by God, I'm closing my eyes when they're reading how it works. That's the way this thing has been. It's you guys have taught me what to do and what not to do. Gwen will tell you I had the longest pink cloud she ever saw. And Jim kind of agrees with her. You want to hear something funny, you ought to hear the two of us share from the podium at the same time. We've done that on a number of occasions. She speaks, I speak. She speaks, I speak. And it's hilarious because we have to correct what the other one just said because that's not the way we remember it. But today, she's my best friend. When I got here, she was my worst enemy. I got here and I had a problem with the God deal. I went to church. I was a deacon in the Episcopal Church by default, but I didn't get it. I didn't get a connection. And I went to see a guy they referred me to who I'd been to meetings with. And the thing that I always remembered, his most famous thing was, what do you get when you sober up a horse thief? It's a sober horse thief. That's what I remembered Jerry for. And he said, tell me what you see when you see God. And I said, well, I see this two hands, a white flowing robe, and a long white beard, and all these people out in front. And he said, that's your problem. And I said, what? He said, you think you're God. He said, you need to find a God that you can talk to like you talk to me. You need to find a God that you can talk to without a thee or a thou or a wherefore or where art. But hey, Bubba, this is Gunner. I need your help today. And I call him boss today. And that came from Jerry. I just settled on boss. It's just God suits me fine too, but boss seems to work for me. It's not quite so. I don't know. It just works for me. And me and the boss got a pretty good deal going. He doesn't talk to me directly. I tried the meditation deal early on, and I had a woo-woo moment, one of those meeting moments when I felt like I was floating all of a sudden. I said, no more, I'm not doing that. And I still meditate, but in a different way. And I hear the boss talk to me through you guys. My 10 o'clock meeting that I go to Monday through Friday is the best God meeting I've ever been to. A bunch of guys with over 60 years to just a few weeks. Cross section from Oregon to California to Texas to Chicago to New Hampshire to Florida, Tennessee, all over the bloody place. And these guys are good. They talk my language. There's one thing that made a big impression on me. Jim was very big on communicating through cassettes, speaker tapes, and Bob Bazan's and Chuck C. I can't remember the guy who talks about just stepping out easy. Anyway, they're the guys who had a big impression of my early years. We talk about amends, and that was a big deal for me, making amends to my wife. And I had to look up the word, and it means to change. But he gave me a CD or a cassette with Bob Bazan, and Bazan talks about it. He said in the 6 and 7 steps, he said a farmer doesn't grow, he creates the environment for growth to take place, and God grows. And a doctor doesn't heal, he creates the aseptic environment for healing to take place, and God heals. And he said, we don't change. We create the environment for change to take place, and God will change us. It's based on our need to be of service to him today. And that's been my experience. I was terrified that I was going to be washed white as snow and be this little Puritan. And I was told real quickly, Gunner, that's not going to happen to you. I had so many things wrong about this deal. Today, I love sticking out my hand to newcomers or to people I don't know in a meeting. It's a regular thing for me because I don't want you to feel alone in that meeting. I don't want you to feel apart from. I want you to feel a part of. New guys, if they don't fit into what I can help or my experience, I'll put them with someone who can and does. And I do that a lot. There's a guy that comes to our meeting, Jim knows him, and he said I was the first guy he met, and I stuck out my hand and said hello and how are you and are you new and blah 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 blah. And he said, yeah, this is my first meeting. I said, good. Let me introduce you to a fellow over here. And he was a young guy with young kids, both of them. And I think they're still running mates today, 13 years, 10 years later, whatever it is. And that's what I like to do. I like to see people thrive in this deal. I hate it when somebody leaves. I really hate it. I feel like I've done something wrong. I know I haven't. I know that I can't get anybody sober and I can't get anybody drunk. But God, I just hate to see it because they missed the miracle that I found here that you shared with me. You know that thing about life is good? Life is damn good. And that's the way I feel today. So eat more ice cream, swim more rivers, climb more mountains, enjoy the journey, and quit waiting on the destination. It'll get here soon enough. Thanks. Appreciate you letting me share.